On today's World Insight, China airlifts medical supplies to Greece. We speak to the Chinese ambassador to Greece to unpack this budding friendship.
We have worked around the clock to make sure that these supplies could come in time.
And we speak to a renowned epidemiologist on improving access to vaccines and a CEO of a travel platform on how to cope in a turbulent market. Here is our host, Tian Wei.
Hello and welcome to World Insight. I'm Tian Wei in Beijing. We start with the coronavirus in Europe. China has donated tons of medical supplies to the country of Greece. Last weekend, a plane arrived in Athens carrying 550,000 medical and surgical masks, as well as protective gear. The airlift followed an urgent aid request from Greece, with hospitals running low on masks. It has become so dire that each health worker is only given 2 masks per shift. Supplies were collected and sent to Greece within 8 days, at a time when China is still under immense pressure to contain its own outbreak and its own medical supplies are overstretched. For more about the latest, I speak to Ambassador Zhang Qiyue, the Chinese ambassador to Greece. Let's listen in. Ambassador, when I was looking at the photo, I can tell that you were very much excited. So were your Greek colleagues, shall I say, at the airport. I mean, I'm sure at that moment, some of the efforts made by all sides came to your mind, you know, all of these difficulties, one after another, overcome. I guess this, in a way, it's a very interesting moment to be an ambassador, isn't it? A challenging moment.
Yes, in a way that it's a miracle, and I think many of the Greek ministers thought that we together did something. We actually succeeded in the mission impossible.
It only took 8 days from the initiative proposed by the Greek government when they were talking to you and to the final supply of all the materials inside Greece to the Ministry of Health. Tell me more about what really happened within those 8 days.
Because 8 days are really not very long. As far as the organization of these supplies, it takes a lot of work. It's really related to all the ministries and many businesses. So it's a big teamwork. So for the past 8 days, I think both in Beijing and in many places, and also here in Greece, we have worked around the clock to make sure that these supplies could come in time. And also because for this month, the 21st was the only direct flight from Beijing to Greece. So that made it more urgent, all the more urgent, to have the supplies to come to this flight.
What are these issues? Tell me more about them.
Well, first of all, these medical supplies are not in one place. You know, they have to be organized from various factories, different locations, and also because, you know, in Beijing, everybody is extremely busy under great pressure, and there are many, many requests for government assistance. So my colleagues and, you know, the ministries are doing a million things at the same time. So it's not easy to have this consignment put together within such a short period of time. And then another issue is for transportation. You know, you have to bring all these supplies to the airport. That's one thing. And also, there's really not enough cargo space in the plane. So we have to find ways to make sure that things will get onto the plane. And we have handed over all of them to the Greek government, and they will distribute these much-needed supplies to the hospitals.
However, some wonder whether China is trying to do masks diplomacy here.
We are not thinking about playing some kind of diplomacy. What we are trying to do is actually to save lives. I think this is the most important thing, not to put up a show or to have an extra influence on, as some of the media has suspected. I think we are here to really help all the countries that we can to prevent the spread of the disease, to contain this epidemic, and also to save lives. I think that is the most important thing now.
But Madam Ambassador, still people, some of them are skeptical, saying, well, Greece is one of those important countries on China's overall plan for Belt and Road Initiative, and that is why China is so much interacting with the country of Greece, even at this moment, to win some good hearts and minds from the country of Greece. Do you think that is the case?
No, I don't think that is a correct reading of the Chinese action. I think that is actually a misrepresentation of what we are doing and what the Chinese policy is all about. China is a country that has over 5,000 years of ancient civilization, and we have very strong philosophies embedded into the society. And we truly believe in friendship, in assisting and helping your countries, your neighbors, your friendly countries, and peoples around you. I think that is already embedded into our culture. I think as great friends, we have to help each other, especially in time of need. We do this for Greek people, for the Italian people, for the Spanish people, but I think they would do the same to us. I remember that at the special moments when China had to encounter some difficulties, the Greek people helped us in a selfless way. For example, in 2011, when the Chinese government decided to repatriate some workers from Libya, the Greek people went out of their ways to help us. They, sent ships to Libya to bring our workers back, and also they allowed our workers to come to the island of Crete without, visas or this kind of authorization, but they were given a special, approval for allowing these workers to go to Crete. And so nobody questioned the sincerity of the Greek country, the Greek government. I don't think anybody would say the Greek had other motivations. But today, when China does something, people would suspect that China has other motivations or other ulterior motives. So I think that is actually a misunderstanding of our government policy, a misunderstanding of the Chinese people. China is faced with big challenges at home, domestically, and we are helping Greece and other countries at the time of medical supply shortage. So that's why it is really not very easy to mobilize all the resources to assist others. But we are fully committed to this because we believe, as I said before, we really believe in solidarity.
Ambassador Zhang Qiyue, Chinese ambassador to Greece. The debate of containment of coronavirus has been heated up by worsening situations around the world. Facing the global pandemic, many calls for international cooperation. So pointing fingers at each other or trying to help to save lives? I asked that question to Ambassador Zhang Qiyue, who also served years in the Chinese Foreign Ministry as the spokesperson. But Ambassador Zhang, may I ask you, there has been a debate about the source of virus for COVID-19. Now, that debate is not just within the scientific circle, it's becoming ever more geopolitical. As someone who served as a spokesperson of Chinese Foreign Ministry for years, what do you make of the current debate?
I know that there have been discussions on this issue. I think the most important thing is that we focus on our work to combat this pandemic. And this is very urgent and it's very serious. I think we all really have to pull our efforts together. Up to now, we have cooperated very well with the Greek side, and they are learning from our experience, and we are sharing with them all the things that we have learned over the past 2 months.
But Madam Ambassador, some would wonder, really, is China just about quote-unquote sharing, or is China trying to show to the others, well, this is our model, use our model, you will be fine?
No, we never wanted to give our model to other countries. We only share what we have done and the experience that we have learned over the past 2 months. And I think each country, the situation is different. So they have to take their measures, they have to take their policies according to their own situation. But it's very important to know the situation, to know the effective cases that happened before, or the cases that are not so successful up till now. So I think the learning part is very important. So we learn about the experience, but also we draw lessons from others as well.
What is likely to be your job, from today on? Because the situation in Greece is very challenging. How would you, as the ambassador from China, to protect the Chinese overseas there in Greece, while at the same time be able to assist the Greek government to provide what China can offer? And also protect your embassy people. You have a team there.
On the one hand, we are communicating with the Greek government and the health authorities almost every hour. This morning I received 2 calls from Minister of Health. I also made 2 calls to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So we have been in very close communication. As I said before, that we are sharing information, sharing the experience that we have. Also, we're helping the Greek government to purchase the necessary medical supplies. As you know, that I think for any country, there is still an acute need for medical supplies of one kind or another. So we are trying to help them as the situation develops further. And on the other hand, we have to, of course, make sure that the Chinese citizens, the compatriots here in Greece, the students, the business people here are also safe. So we are in close contact with every one of them, each one of them. Just to give you the example, that this afternoon I will organize a video conference with all the students that are here, so to send them again the message of caring, and also to ask them to take precautions. So we ask all the Chinese compatriots, the Chinese citizens here, to abide by the order and the rules that has been issued by the Greek government. They have already declared a state of emergency about 10 days ago, but since 2 days ago, they are going to really enforce this lockdown. So they have issued a number of measures. So we ask all the Chinese people here to abide by the rules. And also we have given them a lot of material for reading. For example, the handbook of prevention and control. And we have, from our embassy, we have a WeChat public account that we update information every day. To send them messages, so that they understand what is the situation, what are the Chinese government actions to assist them. For example, our government has set up a medical platform for consultation.
That's right.
That could be used, for all the Chinese around the world, or even our foreign friends as well. So if I remember correctly, that about 2,000 doctors are available 24 hours a day to answer all the questions from people everywhere if they have a medical issue, or if they have some kind of a mild symptoms that they wanted to know how to treat them. So this kind of information is very important for the people that are living outside of China.
Right.
And we tell them that, if they have problems, we will try our very best. For example, we have discussed with the Greek government to designate hospitals for people in case that they are sick. And also we have provided some masks to our students here. And if they need anything else, we will also try our very best to supply them with these supplies and goods. And so we will do everything we can to help our students, our business people here. And so I think that is our focus and is our job. And we will do our very best to do that. Of course, we all have to take precautions ourselves. Our staff are also abiding the rules, so to make sure that we will not, get sick first. So we are trying to restrict, direct contact with people outside of the embassy.
Right.
But our work continues, and not only continues, but our work is even more intense today because there are just so many things to do.
So many things to do. Stay strong, Madam Ambassador.
Yes.
Looking forward to see you again in
Thank
Beijing when everything is settling down. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Welcome back. This is World Insight. I'm Tian Wei. There are only two known ways to deal with COVID-19, antiviral drug or vaccine. Speaking of them, I talked to Dr. Seth Berkley, an epidemiologist who's also the CEO of Gavi, also known as the Vaccine Alliance, a global health organization dedicated to improving vaccine access in developing countries. Let's listen to what he had to say. And I'm joined by Dr. Seth Berkley, CEO of Gavi, the Vaccine Alliance. Dr. Berkley, welcome to the program. It's good to see you again.
Very nice to see you as well.
Dr. Berkley, tell me more about what you know of the latest human trial of the vaccine candidates going on in the United States and also seems elsewhere as well.
So first of all, it is early days. Obviously, we're only about 3.5 months into this epidemic. And it has been somewhat remarkable how quickly we have seen candidates move forward. Of course, we hope that those first candidates are going to provide protection, but we just don't know. And so the critical issue is to make sure we have a full set of candidates from around the world that are moving as rapidly as possible and ultimately to see what works and then how we make those available.
But Dr. Berkley, no matter how fast it is, even already jumping to the clinical trial on humans, it would not be able to help this time, right? I mean, if the pandemic, it's already become a pandemic from epidemic, can be contained for this year.
Well, first of all, I have to commend China. I mean, you have done a remarkable job, and I certainly want to commend the health workers working on the front lines who have dealt with this terrible epidemic. You have done heroic measures to try to control the spread for the people of China, but for the people of the world. And by the way, while I'm at it, let me thank China for stepping up its help for the rest of the world as as the situation has gotten somewhat better in China. But what I think we have to remember is we don't understand, does this organism give long-term protection? And of course, if we were to go back to the normal way we operate, would we just see a re-explosion of the cases? And that, I think, is the question that people will have to talk about. Today, around the world, it is about how do we stop the epidemic today? How do we mitigate the consequences of it? But the longer-term question is, we can't do this forever. We can't have full social isolation. And what we're going to need to stop that is going to be a vaccine that is able to protect against the disease, unless it turns out that over time there is population immunity. But of course, to get population immunity would mean infecting a lot of people, and that may not be the best solution. So what we have to make sure is that that vaccine is moving as quickly as possible. We don't know. Perhaps there is going to be some seasonality of this vaccine. That would be good news. Perhaps there will be a slowdown after control, but we have to worry about this reappearing, and that's why vaccine work is critical.
If we think about some of the current candidates already in clinical trial or human trial, can we give a time frame for the shortest possibility of time, at what time it's likely to come into being? I mean, eventually become a vaccine that can be injected to people who are seeking vaccines. But if it's not successful, what can we rely on related to the technologies of vaccine? Dr. Berkeley.
So, of course, the answer is we don't know, because we don't know which candidate is going to be the one that is ultimately going to be promising, or which candidates. That being said, the traditional time for vaccine development has been 10 to 15 years. With Ebola, we were able to do a rapid clinical trial, and then that vaccine was available in experimental form for a period of time before we had a final licensed product. So the process from starting that clinical trial to having a licensed product in that case was around 4.5, 5 years. What people are hoping is that with every effort made to speed this up, that it could be as short as 18 months to 2 years. But of course, that's going to depend upon having the right technology, having the right results, and making sure that the process, you know, goes without any hitches at all, because we'll need to see that this vaccine works in different age groups and different people.
That's right.
And we can accelerate many aspects of the work, but we can't accelerate everything. We still will need to go through a testing procedure to see what works, and we'll have to understand safety, and we'll have to figure out how to manufacture this at scale. It is possible that vaccine will be available once we know it works in small amounts to be able to use in an emergency situation as part of a clinical trial. That's what we did with Ebola vaccine, and we were able to control 2 major epidemics, and ultimately then to create a licensed product that we're now having available in stockpiles to make sure that there aren't further outbreaks spreading as badly as the ones that did in 2015 and more recently in North Kivu.
Dr. Berkeley, another thing related to it is, you know, the genome that were put out by the Chinese scientists 2 weeks after the cases were discovered in China at the very beginning, whether it is still likely to support the work of making vaccines as the virus is continuing to spread and it's going into different generations. So will that be enough, or likely vaccine have to be made for virus at different generations? In other words, once a vaccine is being made, will it still be able to help people when the virus is already becoming different?
That is a great question, and you know, we have examples of both. As you know, every year we have a new flu vaccine that is based upon the local circulating strains because of all the changes that occur. On the other hand, we've had a measles vaccine that has worked for more than 50 years and has not had any problem with the changes. The changes that occur, and of course all viruses will have changes, what really matters is how does it affect the part of the virus that is being targeted by the immune system. And so there is not, the genetics of it is important, but what we really care about are the pieces on the surface of the virus. And And that we have to understand once we know how we're going to get protection for this disease. The world is already tracking that. They've divided now worldwide strains into, last I heard, 3 different clades, 3 different groups and families of this virus. So already there's been some change, but the vaccine, if it targets a part of the virus that is conserved, it may protect against all 3 of those, or it may be that as the virus changes over time, we may have to adapt our vaccines going forward. There are many scientific questions that still remain, but what's important about this is that most of those can be solved, but that's why we need a truly global effort to try to answer this. And by the way, it was remarkable that China was able to sequence this virus and get that out to the world 2 weeks after it was observed. This is just incredible work, and again, China needs to be commended for that.
Once the vaccines are being made, tested, and can be put into the market, whether the world will be able to share it or it's likely to be nationalized by whichever country?
Well, of course, I think nothing talks about the importance of having a global view as this particular outbreak does. Although the first identification of the virus was in China, obviously this is now in over 140 countries. And so we need to understand that any infectious disease, any time, can do that. But second of all, we also need to understand that the best ideas, the best technologies may come from any of the different countries, and it may come from multiple countries. We may have a vaccine from one country, an adjuvant, which is a stimulant to make the vaccine work better, from another country, and a manufacturing from a third. So from my perspective, we need to think of this as a global solution. The other issue is that we don't know in 18 months where the epidemic will be, and therefore the vaccine needs to be made available wherever the epidemic is, because if we have large groups of people in the world with an uncontrolled epidemic, it threatens the whole world because it can reintroduce, as we saw it happen in this case. So, you know, from my perspective, science is global, and so does this response need to be. Of course, every country wants to make sure it has access of the appropriate tools for its citizens, but it can't only be for its citizens if it wants to make sure these epidemics stops. It has to be a global perspective.
One has to bear in mind that even for organizations like yours, there are major fundings coming from certain countries, or from A country or country B. Will that have an impact on your decision and the way of doing things? Will that put a limitation on the kind of cooperation you could have with either countries or organizations or individuals?
So I think the wonderful thing about the multilateral system is that we receive funding from all of the G7 countries, but we also receive funding from all of the BRICS countries. And, we're working with a wide range of supporters. And so there is a governance mechanism that obviously each donor has a voice in, and each companies, because we also work with vaccine companies across the world, both in developed and developing countries, and obviously working with many recipient countries, they all have a voice in the governance mechanism, but nobody has a controlling voice. And so the idea here is that we work for the good of the world. Of course, from time to time, we will be going out and asking for more money, and we're in a replenishment period now. We fund ourselves every 5 years, so that it's not about every time something happens you go out and ask for it. It's rather, how do we build a system that can operate for the good of the world continuously over a time period and adapting.
As someone who has been working on vaccines, looking at epidemics developed at different stages at different times, what do you worry the most? And what would you suggest is the solution for those who are watching our interview today, Dr. Berkeley?
Well, of course, at the end of the day, I worry that we have the best science making the products. But what I worry about, of course, is that a product that is not available to where it's needed does us no good. And that's the fundamental reason Gavi was set up, because new vaccines, the science is moving so quickly and so well, but these new vaccines weren't available to people who needed them the most, those living in the poorest countries. And that was because of cost barriers and systems barriers. And so we worked to try to solve that, and as I've said, have been quite successful. But we know it is evolutionarily certain that we will continue to have outbreaks of infectious diseases. President Xi has said this as a priority for China. We need to be better prepared, but that's true for every country. So how do we put that system in place so that when a disease occurs, we have a vaccine as soon as possible and it's made available to those who need it? That's what drives me, and it's the opposite of that that would worry me, that we didn't make sure that we made these things available to everybody who needed them.
Dr. Seth Berkley, CEO of Gavi, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Keep yourself healthy and also your family, please. This is World Insight. The COVID-19 outbreak hit the tourism industry fast and hard. Though some tourist sites in China have reopened, transportation and tourism companies still face an uphill climb. The Shanghai-based Trip.com, also known as Ctrip, is China's biggest online travel platform and the second largest in the world. When the outbreak started in late January, as lockdowns and quarantines descended, the company was one of the first to offer customers free refunds and pioneered a one-click cancellation policy. On the one hand, Trip.com has served the grumbling customers. On the other, the company is managing losses. Its shares fell by more than 10% this year. Trip International CEO Jay Sun and Chairman James Liang announced earlier this month that they will give up their salaries starting in March. In my earlier interview with Ms. Sun, she told me that they are hoping for the best, but certainly preparing for the worst with hardest efforts. Now we are joined via Skype by Jane Sun-jie, CEO of Trade.com Group. Jane, good to see you.
Thanks for having me.
Since our last talk at Davos, World Economic Forum, things have been changing so much. So last week, you and also the chairman of Trip.com have claimed that both of you would have zero salary from March. Is that what you're going to do this month?
Yes, we start with the top management. So both our founder and executive chairman, James, and myself voluntarily take zero pay starting from February. And our top management team also are voluntarily taking 50% pay cut to take the lead, preserve resources to make sure we can fight through the most challenging time to handle the crisis right now.
Yeah. Trip.com is supposed to operate all over the world. You're the largest, one of the largest in the world. So what about that? Because now we have got the news that the confirmed cases of COVID-19 outside China have already exceeded the number of that in China, which means globally it's a pandemic and it's very severe. What about the international business?
Yeah, I think if we look at our business, about 65% of our business comes from the domestic travel market. For us, we saw the hit on the domestic market before our international market got the hit. Now, since the virus is well under control within domestic China, we expect domestic travel will recover before the international business as well.
But what about for your international market? That's also a big share, a chunk of your business. And also we have seen travel bans from countries against China. And now with more confirmed cases outside China, China would put certain kinds of travel restrictions and also quarantine measures against anyone coming into the country. It's just one of those measures you need to take in order to control the virus. So what about that, the international business?
Right now, our priority for international business is really to take good care of our customers when they have needs to change refund, cancel, or delay their trips. And we have experience for the international business just as we did for the domestic business. But our expectation is about if every country learn from what China has done, hopefully China took about 1 to 2 months to get the virus under control. We are hopeful that learning from what China has done, leveraging what China has gained from the experience perspective, within 1 to 2 months, the international business will also see the bottom and start to recover.
I was off the record talking to some of your partners, Jane, if I could report to you. They were telling me that you were personally on the phone persuading them to provide the free cancel services for many of your customers. I mean, to me, it's amazing. How could you, as a CEO, personally on the phone, talk to almost many of your important partners? So tell me, how was that process like when you try to persuade? What kind of give and take you have to provide in order to make sure that your customer will enjoy that?
First step we took is for patients and for the medical personnel, if they travel with us, we offer 100% coverage if they need to refund, cancel, or delay their trips. The second step we took is, as Chinese government published a policy that non-group travelers will be allowed for going abroad, we immediately need to put in place the measures to take care of our customers. So we launched 100 million natural disaster relief fund to take care of our customers. And then the volume start to increase significantly. And we, as a first step, we double the natural disaster relief fund. After that, we need to work with the industry players just to make sure everyone is brought to the front line. So I was working with our team at the front line, handling the customer requests 24 hours nonstop. So I understand what is customers' request. So I pass on these information, and by talking to the CEOs of major hotels, cruise ships, airlines, local tour operators, rental car companies, etc., just to let them know how bad the situation is in China. And for them, many of them live outside of China and really don't know what's going on within China. So some of them had a lot of experience working with our team. So they said, yeah, Jane, whatever you say, we'll support you. But some of them, they are big organizations. It takes time for them to sink in. And I told them, I understand the situation. I understand you are a big organization. You need time to make the right decision. But this is what we have seen. This is what we recommend for you to consider. So gradually, everyone come together with the same conclusion that at this moment, we need to 100% support the travelers around the world. So I'm very glad the whole globe team come together. So I really think through this disaster, we really feel how important every country works together. It's really one globe, one team.
Yeah. Well, Jane, you talk about several sectors among the travel industry. Which sector, according to your latest analysis, is likely to be hit the most? What are some of the strategies you've been recommending to them as a platform?
Yeah. So if we look at the segments, hotel and air tickets are the major anchor products. So we have to develop a strategy that is very scalable. For example, when we first received the phone calls, our call center employees contact the hotel call center employees. And that is not very efficient because call center employees are not authorized to make a decision on the spot. So what we did is we give recommendation to the CEOs around the world. And I told them, domestic China, we really need to have a scalable policy. If the hotels or the air tickets are not used, we should 100% to refund the customer. If it is partially used, maybe we can consider a 50% refund policy, just to make it very easy for the team in the front line to process. And we have millions of customers waiting on the line. So gradually, I think in the global spaces, we have common methodology to develop a scalable API, to develop a scalable policy. So once the disaster hits, we can very quickly, efficiently handle the pressure from all fronts, from every country.
Jane, but what about for your own business? I mean, when things are going in the direction that we do not want it to be, which is now, you know, COVID-19, nobody can do anything about it except social distancing, quarantine, containment, and also mitigation. So what would you do in order to survive and probably survive in a better shape? And maybe not to have zero salaries all the time anymore, Jane. What about cash flow? What about consumer confidence? Tell me more about that.
Yeah, so we need to do a couple of things. One is make the team as efficient as possible. So for example, there are lots of technology backlog in terms of project. When the business is very busy, we always focus on what drives the volume. Now the volume is down, right? So the project that will save us on the cost side get priority, and scalability, and historical projects that is not going to be see the return right away get priority. So our technology team, product team, service team are very busy training our employees, getting the project prioritized, to welcome, to get ready for the uptick for the business. And then secondly, our employees also are taking lots of trainings, because in the busy days, they are so busy either to handle the increased volume or handle the cancellation. So for C-Trip University, we have thousands of classes ready for our employees to study. The sign-up rate is very high. So when the business is ready to take off, they are ready.
Jen San, who is the CEO of Trip.com Group, thank you. Really appreciate it. All the best.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Jane. Jason, coming from Trip.com. The tourism industry is certainly struggling. And that is all we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel, Twitter, and Facebook accounts. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the team, thanks for watching.